hand of God got called in, and eventually we had one that was committed to democratization.
Why are you not mentioning their names?
Okay, yeah, it's an open thing. Yeah, I meant in the first instance, I was talking about President Ibrahim Babangida, who ruled for 8 years and he couldn't deliver democracy, and eventually we had Abacha, who was very draconian, couldn't also deliver democracy. Yes, he wanted to deliver it, but he wanted to succeed himself as a military president. But, God thought otherwise and took him away. Then we had Abdulsalami Abubakar, who was democratically minded and eventually handed over to a military administration. So a civilian administration, I beg your pardon. So I think for Nigerian students, for the youth, it was a period of uncertainty where they were probably looking forward to a better country. Because I remember I was a young person then. I could call myself a youth too then. I was looking forward to a better country where I could get married, be happy, have my children, be fulfilled, have everything that a man is supposed to have in life, and be accomplished and all of that. And you were just wishing that the country was better, that the atmosphere was better, regarding political stability, regarding economic prosperity and sustainability, cultural satisfaction, religious freedom, all sorts. You wish that all the pieces in the jigsaw fitted well, and of course, if it wasn't going to fit well, then you wanted an administration that will herald a good atmosphere for the thriving of life, the living regular family life, earning a decent income, and of course, realizing your life objectives.
So, you were young. What I think one of the things that I want to know is how crucial do you think Nigerian students were in shaping the democracy that we have today before we move on to other parts of the world?
Yeah, Nigerian students are always very, very crucial. Student movements, are often the conscience of the society. It's one conscience of a social system, and Nigeria cannot be different. We used to have a much more vibrant, much more credible and reputable student-led organization called, especially University Student, for instance, National Association of Nigerian Students. At the national level, they were very reputable because, yes, you may say there was some enthusiasm in them, but of course they reflected the concerns of the average citizen. They reflected the concern of the ones who were looking at tomorrow and who wanted their tomorrow to be better than their today. And there was so many evidence of many of them growing to become leaders, in the social system, especially in the political space. Nigerian, some of the leaders we had then, where I remember very well when I was in the university, and where Labaran Mako eventually became editor of a newspaper, became commissioner, became a deputy governor, wanted to be governor eventually, but he didn't win, because you could see that tendency in him even from then on, from when he was young. He was actually very active. He was a leader of the National Association of Nigerian Students. What about Lanre Arogundade? Lanre Arogundade is still very active in the civil society, and he showed signs of this at a very young age. As at that time, these fellows were also in the agitation for the exits for the military to quit. Even the popular Omoyele Sowore was a student union leader as those times, and it was very agitated. So he's not just starting what he's doing today. He started a long time ago. Then, of course, even Rotimi Amechi, who eventually became governor of Rivers State, was a student union leader. Then the impeached deputy governor of Edo State was a former student union leader. The late what's he called? What do you call him now? I've forgotten his name. Chima Ubani was a former student union leader. Imai Ezeazum, former student union leader. They grew and became civil society leaders. They grew into the civil society. Many of them became attorneys. Yes, some of them went into politics, And of course, even Obamidele Okoyemi, who's presently the Senate Majority Leader, was a student union leader. It was NAS president. And of course, yes, they grew into the system. Some of them still very active, but some of them have been soaked in the shenanigan of the system. Yes, that's how life is. Things change, time change can change people. Realities do change, but they show signs of being, missionaries. Missionaries of change, missionaries of reform. And many of them imbibed ideologies that were committed to drastic changes. Those times, communism, socialism had not faded the way it has faded now. We still had, people who believe in the alternative theories of socialism and capitalism and communism as against capitalism. Those ones are faded now. We hardly have people who are committed to ideologies now. The ideology we seem to have in the system now is only about money. Money, more money, and much more money. That's the ideology we have now, unfortunately. But you cannot joke with the place of students. And the tragedy of the present situation is that, in my own opinion, the present set of students we have now, in the main, are those who have imbibed the shenanigan of the old wars. The system have actually drained them, and they are drenched in the imperfections of the system, such that at very early ages they want to start mimicking the downsides of their elders. The kind of values that the elders subscribe to, that is a disservice to growth and development, are the things they otherwise, regrettably, want to be imbibing. And we're talking about profligacy here, extravagance, undue luxuriation, you want to put it in a primitive way, they just want to enjoy without working. They want to be seen as powerful, they want to have eats, they want to have cars, share luxury, where we should be concerned about growing our values, cultivating a very strong political culture, growing a strong political economy that is sustainable, building our institutions, building our structures so that we can have a varied nation, where generations that are upcoming, the succeeding ones, can be more assured.
Thank you. So right now we are seeing something really sort of a shape that's, should I say shift away from the shape of the democracy that we're used to, or that's been prevalent all these decades. One of the biggest movements that's going on, student movements that's going on right now, is going on in the United States, of course, as a result of Israel-Gaza war or genocide. We can't call it a war because it's not symmetrical, but yeah, the genocide. Now, the question is, when you look at those students and, they're doing encampments in a way that, before it wasn't encampments back in those days, but now they're all camping in the university, they're refusing to move, they're demanding divestment from companies and the universities, from companies who are doing business with Israel, etc., etc. Now, if you look at the way the American Security Service, the police, even the political groups, the sort of political elites, the way they are responding to those children, I'm reminded of those issues or the way Nigerian students were treated during Ali Must Go. Would I be wrong? And if I'm not wrong, what do we think is going on? What would you say is going on? Because that wasn't supposed to happen in America. Certainly not in today's America. Not in the America that's constantly exporting, cheating, and interfering with other countries for the sake of democracy, as they claim.
I think first we have to put this in context, and second, we have to understand the social psychological aspects of student agitation. First, in the first instance, human beings behave the same way. It simply depends. It's simply a matter of context most of the time. It doesn't matter whether it's America or Nigeria, or whether black, white, brown, or colored, or anything you want to look at, anyhow you want to look at it. The behavior of human beings are simply moderated by regulations or law, if you want, or to some extent by culture, by worldview, or by religious cultivation. So all these things combine to shape how people behave, and that's, if you see people behaving differently, it's just a reflection of how they have been moderated or shaped by their own jurisdiction or ecosystem, as the case could be. Then secondly, the young person or the children or the youth sometimes is more prone, to agitation because he's psychologically less burdened, than the elderly one, for instance. He can take more risk, even in the physical terms of it. He can take more risk. He has less worries, and physically is actually much more agile, some of the things that an elderly person or a more mature, a senior person will be thinking about, he or she may not think about it, and of course, he's looking at the future, with an expectation of a great monumental glory, and he doesn't want it to be compromised. And you see him reflecting it in his actions and inactions. So that is a tendency that is common or that can be found in any jurisdiction. And it doesn't matter that it's in the United States. We see young people agitating in the US now because ordinarily you and I will agree that the United States is a sophisticated country, worse and all, in terms of development, civilization, exposure, then the ability of the system to withstand shocks because they have strong institutions. And it is no surprise, it's not a surprise that they are coming out now, to put pressure on the Biden administration, to be mindful of U.S. policy with respect to support for Israel, which is tangling, with Hamas, in the Middle East, So it's a reflection. What the young ones are doing in America, is a much more robust, aggressive reflection of what the senior ones are doing through dialogue, through some other kinds of pressure tactics, like legislative acts, like motions, like debates, like consultation and all of that. And the young person is not likely to be as patient, or to be as moderate or as circumspect, as the old one. Both of them might not be wrong, but it's just the method, that will always be different. And that's what we see reflecting in the US. So what matters really in circumstances like this is not for administrations or for systems to try and catch these young ones, but rather to manage them, because if you do not manage them well, remember that by the time they've come together in a crowd, they assume the characteristics of a crowd. And the crowd can easily be fickle-minded, and they could get provoked because they're already agitated, and when they are provoked, they could resort to violence. And of course, even the violence might be self-harming, but you do not also, you as a leader, as a mature person, you do not want them to harm themselves in agitating for a cause that is otherwise just, and realizing that what they're agitating for in the first instance is selfless. They're just concerned about what they perceive as a wrong, and it tells you how powerful they can be in triggering change. And I'm happy you mentioned the famous Ali Mongo crisis in Nigeria in the period of the Obasanjo regime. You remember how Segun Okeowo emerged from that circle, as a very famous, one of Nigeria's most prized student leader. And of course, much long after, we have seen all kinds of agitations by Nigerian students. Remember the 1986 student, crisis in ABU, which was around the agitation for the removal of Professor Ango Abdullahi, the then Vice Chancellor. and of course leading to the death of Farida Mustafa. I remember Kunle Adepeju I think it's in Lagos some years earlier. So these are historic agitations, and the cause for which the students fought have remained priceless causes. And of course, change have been brought about most of the time on account of this agitation. And if we have seen it happening in Africa, in Nigeria, it's not surprising that we are seeing semblance of it in 21st century United States of America. So it's about how you manage them, how you react to them. And if you do not manage them well, it can degenerate, it can snowball. And the blame will eventually turn on the government. And no responsible government want this to be the case.
Let's talk about democracy. Today's type of democracy and young people. Do you think today's democracy is able to actually sort of bring in and include young people? Or is democracy now anti-youth? And I'm not just talking about Nigeria. I am talking about all over the world. But of course, we can always use Nigeria as an example.
Yeah. Democracy is an ideal system of government. First of all, let's underscore that fact. It's ideal because it encourages inclusion, integration, and good representation, because all sections of a social system are easily involved in a democratic experiment through representation, and everybody is given opportunity through at some points in time through election. And even in dictatorships or countries that are not democratic, you see semblances of democracy through the establishment of some consultative panels or groups like the Politburo, or the Communist Party in Russia, or the Communist Party in China. Even in the theocratic state, the respected theocratic state of Saudi Arabia, you see some levels of parliament, despite the fact that they are monarchies. They still have groups of people that they consult with once in a while. So this underscores the power of consultation, which is integral to a democratic system. So democracy is evolving. It came about, a courtesy of Greek tradition as a way to involve the larger majority of people in how they are governed. And of course, if you look at also the idea of the Leviathan, it just envisages that people surrender their rights, privileges, and obligations to government. Government is again people by some selected people or elected people, and those people will now in turn use the power of the states through institutions to protect them. It's a negotiated arrangement. I'm giving you something, you give me something back. So that's the essence of.
Yeah, but my thing is though.
I'm building it.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm building a track to an argument. So that's the essence of democracy. But because of jurisdiction, because of human frailties, difficulties in human existence, there are variants of it. Sometimes people want to be self-aggrandizing, people want to take advantage, people are not sincere, people are covetous, some people are greedy, and that's why we talk about bad leadership. When you have bad leadership, leader that is self-aggrandizing, that is not altruistic, they work against the tenets of democracy. And to deal with this, nations have come up with different ideas. Some of them try to integrate the broader culture of democracy. They try to integrate their cultures into it, their peculiarities into it. And that's why in our system, we're also seeing that wholeheartedly using or imbibing the presidential system that is borrowed from America is not suitable for our democracy, for our own culture, because we have our own peculiarities. And maybe that's why our democracy seems not to be working. There are some limitations that you can identify with our system for now. And if you look at it critically, if we think better, we could probably be much more ingenious, much more creative in trying to grow our democracy. And that's why the conference that started in 2014 came out with some recommendations that are otherwise original, that try to reflect our culture, but we jettisoned it. And from then on, we haven't moved further. And that's why people are calling for restructuring of our politics. People are saying perhaps we should have a unicameral legislature rather than a bicameral legislature. And that's why people are saying we should probably have a parliamentary system, not a presidential system, because it makes the president too powerful. So the debates, the conversation is continuing because democracy can also be very complex. It's a kind of administration that needs constant review to reflect the realities of the time. And the success of democracy is actually depends on how well the social system can tweak it to suit its culture, its tradition, and to meet the wishes, for them to meet the wishes and aspirations of their own people.
Okay, so with everything going on in Nigeria and of course around the world, would you say, or should young people, as in students, be in the forefront of the agitation for freedom and change?
Yeah, definitely. It is taken for granted. The young people, even by projections, by estimates, they are more in Nigeria. We're in an era of youth bulge where the young ones are more than the old ones, for different reasons. We may not go into those reasons now. And we have seen young ones taking over in different sectors around the world. They are taking over leadership in some cases. They are taking over leadership in business, for instance. In technology, they are leading, some 15, 20 years ago, we weren't having young ones as billionaires, people in their 20s and 30s as billionaires. But it seems the fad now, courtesy of the new gains in technologies of doing things, and the technologies are multivariate. We have them in communication, we have them in aviation, in medical technology, in construction. I remember also that we're in a world of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, augmented reality, etc. And the leadership in these sectors are actually young ones. So if they are very vibrant in technology, you should know they can also be very vibrant in politics. Peradventure, you give them, if they have the opportunity. But we need to also underscore the fact that sometimes achievement, success, may not be a function of age, because you can see some young people who are stupid as much as you see some old people who are silly. You also see old people who are non-entities and young people who are brilliant, So age bracketing may not be the issue. It just might be a personal it may be an individual thing. But I understand you're probably talking in terms of preponderance,
Well,
if you want to look at it in terms of preponderance, then of course you give.
Okay, let me help out. I'm looking at resistance groups across the world, and we look at, those who are fighting for freedom, who are fighting for emancipation, who are fighting for change of government, etc., in several countries, in different countries,
good.
In Nigeria as well. So, let's look at what happened in NSAS. NSAS was a moment, yet another critical moment, where young Nigerians stood up to demand a change. Right? It wasn't just about the police. It was about the fact that we want a different type of country, different type of structure, different type of governance. We want a more respectable, more, equality, equity-driven governance structure, etc., and society. Well, NSAS was cut short, as we all know. It ended brutally with quite a few young people losing their lives. My question is, given such situations, why should young people continue to put themselves forward to say, you know what, we're the students, we're going to demand change? We've been given too young to rule, but nobody's letting us rule.
No, my dear. You cannot say because you tried once and you didn't succeed, then you're not going to try again. The struggle in life is a continuous one until God finally calls us. So we'll keep trying, right? The young ones did very well in the period of NSAS. Maybe they were overwhelmed, or maybe the state moved against them and they couldn't continue. But it's not enough reason to say because of that they would not keep trying. If you remember the rule, the change that was brought about as a result of the Arab Spring, and who were those that started the Arab Spring? They were the young ones, And if you go farther into history, the Russian Revolution, Vladimir Lenin, all those who came after him, Nikita Khrushchev, you name them, plenty of them. They were young ones. They were young. And what about Fidel Castro in Cuba? He was also young, when he did all this, And some of them, they fought for a very long time. It wasn't just, they made a career out of struggling, out of agitation. It depends on how convinced you are, how driven you are, how psychologically driven you are, how motivated you are. Sometimes you may say it's one of choice, but again, choice can be a function of the environment you find yourself, a function of your zeal, your background, your mission, your vision, your cardinal objectives. So it could be a function of many of these things, but they were young when they did all these things. And even in Nigeria, those days, so it's only until now that we're beginning to see leaders who are septuagenarians, octogenarians, so to say, who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or 50s. Those days, our leaders were in their 20s. Matthew Mbu was Foreign Affairs Minister of this country in his early 20s. Bola Igetu was a leader in his early 20s. Yakubu Gowon became head of state of Nigeria at 32, 34 or so. Olusegun Obasanjo was head of state at 38 and retired as a full general at 41. Okay? We have had governors who, Donald Duke, Ojikalu.
Yes, but we could argue that all of those people that you mentioned, they were, they were at a time when perhaps Nigerian was more. Look, 25 years ago, there is an argument that 25 years ago, when we went back to democracy, that was the best time for everybody and anybody who wanted to go into government or into politics to go into politics, because pretty much everybody that stuck their head out had a chance of winning, because the country really wasn't used to it, right? So you had all these leaders that are coming up, that came up, that were shaped, etc., etc. Obasanjo's 8 years.
My dear,
go ahead.
I don't believe there's a time that's not good for anybody to do anything.
Okay.
It's just a matter of zeal, right? It's a matter of zeal. Old people were there when young people came into business and succeeded, becoming billionaires. So old people, nobody gives you power on a platter of gold. Nobody
what if they put a
right on the platter of gold?
What if they put a gun in front of you and say you can't come through?
No, that's an extreme case. That's going to be an extreme case. But it's about agitation. It's how did Diabelo become governor of Kogi State? He was 41 or 42, right? How did you were talking about those days? What about even in present times? We have governors who are in their 40s. I can't remember them now, but I know there's one in the northwest and another one somewhere in the northeast. Some of them are in their 40s.
Okay.
They joined the fray. They didn't see themselves as people who could be undermined. They saw themselves as people who were capable, who could make a difference.
Okay.
And they created it for themselves.
Okay.
So my dear, it's not. We can't expect them to give us on a platter of gold. Yes, there was a law that says not too young to run or not too young to rule.
Yes.
And all such things. Yeah.
But my listeners are now calling to ask you. I'm sure they have questions for you, Doc. Give me 1 second. Yes, because you've triggered them. I'm telling you, you've triggered them.
No problem. Okay.
Hello? 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 You're not
I'm
speaking.
here. I hope you hear.
No, not you. Not you. I think that was a bad line. Hello?
Hello, Ireti.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah, this is Memnon from First Start.
Go ahead, Memnon.
What I want to say, actually, whenever people are saying young people, the way Nigeria is now, if you are saying young people, the first question is number one, are you ready to die for Nigeria? Number two, who's your backup? I can't count on judiciary people, maybe here or there. Then number three, am I going for power by any means necessary? Because the people I'm going against, they will do anything for power. So I don't know what the doctor's opinion is on these three facts.
So what is the question? You laid
my
down
question
three
is,
facts. What is
in
the
a
question?
place like when the young people are against, like let me say 80% state power is against you. They can shut down your account. How do we fight this amount of power and pressure?
Okay, thank you very much. Doc, can you write that down? The lines are going crazy, so I'll answer a couple more calls. Give me 1 second. No, give me 1 second. I'll answer a couple more calls. If you could just make a note of that. If you've got a pen near you.
Okay, all right.
Hello?
Good evening, Nephew.
Good evening. Good evening. I need you to speak up, please.
Yeah, you have man on the line.
Go ahead, Emmanuel.
Yeah, my question is, many of the old people in power today, they were once young, and then they have the sagacity, to fight them.
Yes.
And it seems they know the rudiments, of a young person fighting. They have the tactics of the young person.
Correct.
And then they are using their tactics against the young person.
Okay.
Young people today. So what do your guests think that the young people, will do, to fight in a different way? Because the old people today were once young people.
Okay, what should the young people do differently?
Yeah, differently today.
Thank you.
Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Still listening. Thank you as always. Hello?
Hello.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from, please?
Yeah, this is the merchant man.
Okay, go ahead, merchant man. Your question, please.
Yeah, my question to your guest is, he said something about there's no better time to join in the Nigerian politics.
Yeah.
Then my question is this. When all of us, I was young then, when everybody was actually fighting to restore democracy in Nigeria, by then there was no class that these people are the real people that are supposed to take up the responsibility and decide the affairs of the country. Now, these people eventually got the power and they decided to loot everything. At the end of the day, they became so powerful.
Merchant man, you need to ask your question. This is borderlines. Come on.
Yeah, my question is, when you say there is no better time, the youth are handicapped financially. These people who have looted all the resources cannot afford the youth the opportunity to go for those positions. So what do we do about it? That's my question.
Thank you very much. Right. Okay. I think they're all pretty much the same question, Prof.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I think what I think the first one was, how does a young aspiring politician, governor, etc., lawmaker, how do they fight when the state structure is being used against you? That's one question. The other one is, what should young people do differently to what those who are currently in government did when they were young? And like Rapachuku said, which is pretty much the same thing, is that there's all this looting going on. There's no space for young people to actually come and lead.
Okay, let me say something quickly, right? You see, in a social system, right, there are different ways in which you can classify the system. You can classify people using different, yardsticks. You can say male, female. You can say maybe Muslim, Christian, young, old, strong, weak, rich, poor. Different ways of classification. Able and disabled. So every group has these needs to agitate. Every group has a concern, has a worry. But what matters is how you project your case, how you do not allow yourself to be undermined. Because if you allow the other, they will undermine you. And of course, it is the right of man to be slightly agitative so that people will not take you for granted. I understand the concerns of the contributors, and I know that the conditions are unpleasant. Much as the conditions are unpleasant for youth, they are also unpleasant in many instances for women, for instance, for those who are physically challenged, and for the minority in the social system. Nigeria often talks about Hausa, Fulani, Yorubas, Igbos. What about the minorities? What about the thieves? What about the Chukuns? What about the Jaws? The queries. Minorities are also, they also have the need, to be much more represented. But if they keep quiet, of course, nobody will be able to solve their problem, because the majority, those who are dominating, the tendency is for them to continue to enjoy their privileged position. So we need to continue to agitate, bring ourselves together, sustain the struggle until the battle is won. And that's why oftentimes you hear the struggle, the struggle continues. Victory is certain. So self-motivation is very, very important, despite the fact that the conditions might be unpleasant. Life itself is a struggle. The Indians will say that life, there's more to endure in life than to enjoy. It's a continuous struggle, and we did not have to rest on our oars, because it is probably because we are resting on our oars. That's why those who are opportune, have been able to corner machineries of the state to their advantage, and that's why we're talking about state capture. And if you look at the percentage of those who have even cornered it, it's just infinitesimally small, very small, and of course there are disagreements even among them. They unfortunately ostracize a lot more people, even people that are supposedly old, mature, senior people. Not even the young people in the first instance. In this instance, there are people who have been disadvantaged for a long time, and they have become mature people, being disadvantaged, unfortunately. So what we're talking about is the need for integration, increased integration, equal opportunities, equal rights, create equal opportunities. And that's why in the ID system, the sophistication or the level of civilization of any social system is determined by the level of opportunities available in the system. Why do you think people prefer to go to countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and non-developed countries in the West, much more than they go to developed countries in the East? Because those in the West, have more opportunities for people. Opportunities are almost always equal. I mean, the chances are there. If they say it, even though sometimes it's not achievable, but you see they are constantly trying to achieve it. That's the drive, the ambition of an ideal social system. So what we should be agitating for is equal opportunity, and we do not have to rest in this regard. In our own case, that's why I said that our people, the young ones, did well the other day through EndSARS. There are still opportunities. Some of this agitation may not even be organized. It could be spontaneous. Just like EndSARS movement was, and like Arab Spring was. And to be thinking about what they can do differently. Well, I'm not going to ask anybody to carry arms. No, the state has the monopoly of carrying arms. And of course, if you are bearing arms, you are calling for self-destruction. You want to challenge the state. Often very difficult. Nobody does this and succeed most of the time.
Okay.
But civil agitation is legitimate. The one that is legitimate is there. Be consistent, be peaceful, the way you advocate for your rights, come together more. If you come together more, you'll be able to put the feet of the leaders to fire. And the fact that they are allegedly riding roughshod on us, could turn into a different narrative. We could change the narrative if we are much more agitative, much more involved in the process. But if we simply look at them as people who, because of the opportunity they have, because they are in government, they can distribute favors, they can distribute handouts, they will begin to sing hallelujah on citing them.
Okay.
And they'll continue to enjoy those opportunities that they have and think that we are satisfied where we are as young people, whereas we are not satisfied.
Okay. All right, I'm coming to your calls now. I know you've all got questions for Prof. Hello.
Good evening, Sister.
Good evening. Good evening. Your name and where you're calling from, and your question, please.
Ms. Oboli calling from Ikorodu.
Go ahead, Mrs. Oboli.
As well.
Yes.
I'm happy he made mention of EndSARS, because that would have been my reference point. But Sister, after what happened at EndSARS, there's this fear amongst youth that nobody is ready to lay their life down again for Nigeria.
Okay.
EndSARS has gone, nothing happened. Those deaths, they said it was a mirage, but we all know and knew what happened then. and nothing. Nobody was held accountable. Nobody
Okay,
came out
Mrs.
to
Oboli,
people
I need
and
your
nothing.
question, please. Yeah.
So my question is this: if the youth are ready to go all out there, are you saying people will come and stand for them? Should they lose their lives in the process?
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay, thank you.
For answers.
Thank you. Okay, Prof, please make a note. I'll be back with you in a second. Hello.
Hello, good evening, ma.
Good evening, Koboko. How are you? Yeah, very slowly, Koboko.
I like again. Ask him that Nigeria is, I don't think that we are laughing, but it's like the 40s. Nigeria police and Nigeria army are against the youth. Another one, I don't think Nigeria needs the democracy of America. This is democracy, which is the government of Abuja.
What is your question?
So that they go through before they enter Abuja, enter governor, enter the government chairman. Then I say, I think that we need democracy, not American borrowed democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Prof, I hope you heard Koboko because I couldn't hear him very well. But
I didn't hear his question.
Yes, okay. Bear with me 1 second. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello, good afternoon, Mrs.
Good afternoon. What's your name and where you calling from, please?
This is Chris calling from Ikeja.
Your question, please, Chris.
Yeah, my question goes almost the same. Let me say it's almost the same thing with what Mr. Oboli just said. In a situation whereby it came out for protest and the state used the state apparatus against the youth. Yeah. And it comes out again, they use the state apparatus against the youth. And with what your guest there is saying, that we should not take up arms against the state, challenging the state, and nobody survive in such things. So in this case now, what do the youth do? Because the answers, everybody knows what happened on ESTA's protest. So in this, if the youth comes out again with to challenge the government on that aspect,
okay,
what will happen? What should we do as youth
all right.
in this country?
Okay, thank you. Okay, one last one. Hello?
Sisioga.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
I greet you.
Yes, good afternoon. Your name, your question,
greet you, I guess.
Yes.
Professor, Prof.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Raprushu.
Yes, go ahead.
My question is, I want to ask your guest, don't you think, how do I put it now? Another system of swearing our African leaders to undergo, apart from this system they are going through, maybe the way they are swearing them into office, they go through another system, maybe traditionally, because this system, they don't regard it, they don't respect it anymore.
Well, this is really about young people. It's not about swearing in our leaders. This conversation is about young people, student protests, student resistance. That's what it's about.
Those who called made very points, and I appreciate that. Those days I remember when we were in the student movement, we used to use this process of saying that we'll start with consultation. Anytime we felt agitated, we'll say consultation, consolidation, and confrontation. 3 C's. We'll consult amongst ourselves, discuss. It doesn't matter how long it takes for us to consult. It could be short, it could be long. It depends. Then, of course, we consolidate. We map our strategies. Do we do street protests, or do we just write letters, advocate peacefully, or what? We take a decision on that. Then eventually we confront. And how do we confront? Not with sticks and arrows, not with sticks and stones, not with bows and arrows, but of course we do physical protests, go before the Vice Chancellor's office, his house, and sit around the place. And the man will probably come out and address us. He knows that we are serious. So these things are processual, one stage after the other. And what I was saying, that there's no need for us to lose our life in the process of agitation, because if life is lost, of course, the purpose is defeated. We'll be talking about something else. It becomes meaningless. The one that is dead cannot fight anymore. And of course, remember the popular song of Bob Marley, that he who fights and run away lives to fight another day. Not necessarily that we should run away, but we should be tactical and strategic. There are battles that we shouldn't fight if we don't have to fight them. You cannot say because you are strong, because you are a bold person, or because you want to show bravery, you want to go and stand in the front of a moving train because you are protesting. No, it is not to lose our life, but the aim is to achieve the end, the purpose, the objective for an agitation. Okay. But consultation matters. And I remember a statesman who is very prominent in the public space, Atedo Peterside, said it, in the wake of the EndSARS struggle, that it is very important for young people to come together, always consult among themselves. And I see it happening in some circles. If you look at civil society groups, for instance, they are mainly populated by young people, and they are doing great. Many of them are doing a lot. Yes, some of them have been corrupted, but a lot more are doing very well. And we're talking about having a lot more that are doing very well, much more than those that are not doing very well. Okay. And if you permit me, the last question that you rejected is also a very important question.
I couldn't. Which one is that? I can't even remember.
On the swearing in of.
Yes, he was asking about questioning about swearing in the leaders. But we're talking about young people.
No, and of course,
well, go ahead,
we have young,
if you want
in some
to do
cases.
That.
Yeah, in some cases we have young people as leaders, and they also swear using the Bible or the Quran. What he's trying to say is that after swearing using the Bible and the Quran, they still go ahead and still, they still do bad things. And he's suggesting the use of African traditional system that is much more immediate in terms of repercussion. Because if you swear by Ogun or Sango and you lie, it is immediate sanction. That's our belief. If you are superstitious, that's probably our belief. So that's what he's probably talking about.
That is what he was talking about. That is what he was talking about, yes. So are you saying we should go that way?
No, it's a constitutional matter. That's what the constitution, I'm not sure. I think it's a matter of choice, of individual choice, whichever one you want to swear by. And if people don't want to swear by those traditional religious instruments, they want to use the Bible or the Quran, you cannot force them. And I'm not sure anybody who want to legislate that we should enforce it, because it will mean that we are enacting laws that infringe on the right of people to make choices. That's the lacuna there. But I understand what he's saying. He's just concerned about people being much more responsive, walking their talk, and not saying one thing and doing the other.
But isn't that a cop-out? I wish we had more time now if we're going to go into that direction. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what we're just basically swapping one religious belief for another religious belief, when actually, really, what should be happening is about the individual. Perhaps the problem is the fact that religion is, politics is centered around religion, whereas it shouldn't be. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'm going to have to call. That's probably the next thing we're going to talk about the next time you come on this show. Are you happy to do that, Doc?
Yeah, no, anytime, no problem. Okay. As long as God Almighty keeps us alive.
You see, you've just centered the show around religion as well. We're going to have this conversation because we do have to look at Nigeria beyond religion. I think when we're talking about young people and we're talking about the future and we're talking about democracy isn't based on religion. Democracy is based on fundamentally human rights and the right of each and every one of us, right? Which has nothing to do with God too.
The fear of God is very important.
No, only if you choose to put God into it. There are lots of countries.
The fear of God.
Yeah, but what if you don't believe in God?
Say again?
What if you don't believe in God?
But if you don't believe in God, at least you subscribe to some values.
Exactly. So it's not the fear of God, it's the goodness of people.
To some values that are godly.
So godly, it's not the fear of God, it is the goodness of the individual. I need to have you back. You see, the conversation was just getting interesting and we run out of time. Thank you so much.
All right.
Professor Abiodun Adeniyi of Baze University School of Postgraduate Studies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you. Borderlines, that's the end of my conversation. My next guest is coming up in about 2 minutes or so. Thank you, Prof.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.